2 weeks maybe, with damage that runs into double figure billions of rands, actually double figure billions of dollars. And so I'm gonna look at some of the issues that happened there and why it happened, and what can we deduce in a more diagnostic fashion. Um, yeah, so just a heads up, this video will not have any solutions, and that's by design. I'm very weary of suggesting solutions to problems that are poorly understood, and I'm equally wary of providing solutions to problems that are poorly defined. And because of that, in the spirit of saying that if someone gives you 3 hours to cut down a tree, I spent 2 of those hours sharpening my axe. That's a principle that I always defer towards, because I always feel a lot more comfortable when I'm approaching problems when I fully understood them to the best of my ability, being mindful of the fact that people often come to different conclusions. So with that said, I mean, we're aware that the looting that happened in South Africa began with the pending imprisonment of the former president Jacob Zuma. So there was a lot of political considerations that went into that. So that was one big contributing factor, or let's just call it what triggered all of it. I'm not going to look into that, not because it's not important. It is important, but it's not. It's beyond the scope of what I'm interested in this video. And then secondly, there's also the element of instigators. And when it comes to instigators, there are 2 kinds of instigators that have been noted by the law enforcement officers and the intelligence community. That would be those who are just basically inciters of violence, the common inciting violence person. And then secondly, those who were involved in a more conceited, organized scheme of undermining the state. Those also are important and played a huge role, but again, I'm not going to look into those factors. They're important, but they are also beyond the scope of what I will be talking about here. Yeah, and so just because I'm not talking about those 3 things doesn't mean that they are not important. They are very important, but we are not going to talk about them. So once the political violence started, so there's an element that then that a lot of people got caught up in it, mostly in the townships, poor people, poor young people, and poor old people, which also actually for me brought a lot of grief and sorrow in my heart, because I was so moved by seeing old women, saying old, 80 years old in my estimate, 75 maybe, old grannies, old mothers, involved in looting. Some of them, I saw them involved individually, and some of them were seen in some videos in Durban looting with their kids. So there was a phenomena that was seen where it was like a family affair, where like a mother or a granny took their kids and grandkids and were like, let's go. I'm assuming that the kids are there to help her carry the stuff. And in this case, it was just mostly food, basic stuff like rice, sugar, oil, and that sort of stuff. So that was the looting that happened in that regards, was mostly food. And there was also the looting that happened with young, poor, unemployed Black South Africans, which also we saw that it was food, but also other electronic goods. We also saw bicycles being stolen, bikes, motorbikes, televisions, um, and we're looking at all of this, and we're trying to understand what in the hell is going on. And a lot of middle class black people have been making comments that I find them to be um, insensitive, out of touch, um, and totally devoid from the reality that is facing many South Africans. My guiding principle on this issue has been, it comes from that text, in Proverbs. It says that do not despise the man that steals to satisfy his hunger, but when they are caught, they must pay everything, even if it costs them their lives. That's just a text that balances difficult situations that were seen even in antiquity, that sometimes people commit grievous crimes because of great desperation. And it was important at the time to note that, because there was a prevailing mood that poor people are morally deficient in olden times. Well, there's a prevailing mood now that rich people are morally deficient. Both of those assumptions are obviously very incorrect, but there was that prevailing, and it was important to note that do not despise people who commit even serious crimes because of desperation, but at the same time do not justify and turn a blind eye to such acts, because as society there needs to be consequences for these sort of actions. And that's just basically a principle that you would find in a lot of situations like these, where people break the law because they are desperate, but at the same breath they need to be taken, they need to be held accountable for that. But how did we get here? And so one of the in my limited way of trying to look in this, the way that I understand it, I looked at a few things that are ongoing in South Africa. One of the things is that South Africa currently in the year 2021 has one of the most extensive social welfare systems among developing countries. Why do we have such a social welfare system? How did we get to a social welfare system that is so extensive? We did so because in 1994, the incoming government realized that the majority of South Africans were not only excluded from participating in the economy, but they were also excluded from the social nets that were put in place for white people. And so one of the things that the ANC government went into doing in 1994 is rolling out this extensive social welfare system, which was further extended around 1999 to include a child welfare grant that covers millions of South Africans, because they recognized at the time that South Africans were not able to put food on the table, were not able to just meet their basic necessities. So what has happened because of that, we have 21 million South Africans who are receiving social welfare of some sort through the state. That is to, if I ignore the old age support that is given to old people, that is not related to employment. It's not a pension fund that is related to working and whatever you contributed to a life and pension cover and whatever. It's more of a, you're old, you are poor, you don't have money. The state gives you, I don't know if it's 1,000 rand right now. So that's excluding those people. It's also excluding the people that are receiving COVID-19 related assistance. This is just South Africans who pre-COVID were and are on a monthly basis receiving government-based social welfare. 21 million folks. 30 million of those is child support grants, and 8 million of that is other grants that are given to caregivers and foster parents and other things, and disability related, all other things. But it's the low estimate is 8 million, and the low estimate in total is 21 million. The actual figure is suspected to be much higher than that. That's one aspect that we need to look at. Also, studies show that the majority of people who receive these grants in South Africa use it towards food and towards their basic necessities. And studies also show that these grants do lower the number of households who have food insecurity in South Africa. Okay, that's an important thing to note, because obviously there's a reason why these grants exist. It's because they are needed, and also they've seen that they actually help people cover their basic day-to-day living expenses. But the other side of the picture is that those figures won't show you is that labor participation in South Africa has remained unchanged for the past 20 years. So you have 21 million people who depend on the government to meet their basic needs. And you've seen in the past 20 years a labor participation that has virtually gone nowhere. Which basically means that the overwhelming majority of Black South Africans are not participating at all in the economy. The unemployment rate right now in South Africa, according to the official figures, in the reduced definition of unemployment, is 40%. The unemployment rate for young South Africans, also the reduced definition, is 75%. Unemployment rate in the poorest provinces in South Africa, which is Limpopo and Eastern Cape, who are by far the poorest provinces, is over 50%, folks. 50%. In May and June of 2021, 10 million South Africans were reported to have had not had enough food. 10 million South Africans. So, this is where we are. This is where we've been for the past 20, 30 years. And really the question is, I think for me, when I'm looking at the issue of what happened with regards to the loot, the looting itself is actually not surprising. What is surprising is, why did it take so long? When I say why did it take so long, not because that I wish that it happened, not because that I'm encouraging for it to happen. I'm saying that I stand without any equivocation against all lawlessness and law breaking. I'm saying that looking at the figures that I've shown you, and the state of affairs that are ongoing in South Africa in the past 30 years, it is surprising that we don't have riots and looting in South Africa every month or even every week continuously. The unemployment rate in South Africa is similar to the unemployment rate in the Gaza Strip in Palestine. That strip of land that is under a military embargo by Israel and other military and economic embargo has the same unemployment rate as a supposedly prosperous South Africa that has a free and open economy. And we know how the situation in Gaza, what happens in Gaza, and a lot of it obviously has to do with the economic situation and the fact that people don't have jobs and they don't have money to put food on the table. So it is rather surprising that South Africa has not been in a constant state of chaos. I mean, if we look at what is ongoing in South Africa, or what has been ongoing in South Africa in the past 20 years and in the past 30 years. Okay, so and then the ANC government last year opened up that COVID-related social welfare program, and according to official figures, when they did that, they received 9 million applications. That's 9 million applications from people who wanted to receive that 350 rands, and there are other programs other than 350 rand. So all of these figures, folks, they're showing us that South Africans are actually teetering at the brink of collapse, and there is hopelessness, there is helplessness, there is despondency, there is hunger, there is poverty, there is desperation. So which is why I'm saying that it is surprising that South Africa is not in a riot every month. Okay, so you remember the figure I gave you, the 21 million South Africans are on social grants. Here are the figures of how many South Africans are employed, are gainfully employed. I don't have the exact, actually it's actually 14,900,000 and some change of South Africans who have a job. So you don't, as you can see, 21 million is more than 14 million. And actually at this rate, we are on our way to going to a state where we already have more people on social welfare than there are people contributing to taxes in South Africa. And we are right on our way to having the number being double, 2 times more people being on social welfare than there are people paying taxes. And as if that is not enough, the NC government first dropped a hint around April this year that they are saying, we want to try out, oh boy, you really can't make this stuff up. Let me, what is it called? A universal grant? Just need to get the actual term for it. It's called the Basic Income Grant. They first hinted on it around April, and then they were talking about it through May, July, where they are basically saying that they want to start a new social welfare program now that is a permanent in guaranteed income for South Africans who are unemployed. So my immediate thought when I first thought of when I first heard of that suggestion was that this is probably an admission of failure from the side of the NC government, because I think they're obviously not blind, so they see the problems that are facing the country. But so they've deliberated and had their um, troubleshooting and whatnot. And if this is the best that they can come up with, therefore this means that they're actually admitting failure, admitting that they actually don't know what to do. They're basically saying that, hey, listen, it's what it is. The only thing that we can do now is just try to find money for people so that they can have something to eat. We basically don't have solutions. We don't have any sustainable solutions. We don't have any solutions that can actually reduce the unemployment rate, reduce or actually increase our labor participation rate, reduce the number of people who are dependent on the government, and increase the number of people who are actually contributing to taxes. We don't have any solutions to this stuff. That's basically what I was getting. But I mean, a lot of people would look at this solution and they were like, yeah, maybe we need it. And then I'm asking myself, really, already right now, South Africa is one of the most taxed, South Africans are one of the most taxed countries, people, in terms of like the citizens in the world. So if, and our debt, our fiscal debt already is very high, how are they going to pay for it? Like, how are they going to pay for this? Because already, I think like 50% of the government deficit goes to paying for social welfare. If I'm not mistaken, 40 to 50%. So if we're increasing the social welfare state of South Africa, how are we going to pay for it? So this is basically the pathology of, in terms of, based on the economic policies, mostly fiscal policies, industrial policies, trade policies that we've undertaken up until now in the past 30 years. This is where we are. And what the current government is suggesting is more welfare, which would eventually mean that more of South African skilled South Africans who already can't breathe because they are overly taxed are actually going to leave. But that's with the issue of tax rates. That's not something I'm going to talk about. I'll talk about it another time, because that's also a key issue in terms of part of the problem or part of the solution, in terms of where exactly should our income tax rate, both on the individual level and also at the corporate level, should be, but also just in terms of our tax code in general, as a tool to either help us lower our unemployment or maintain the status quo of this labor participation rate that hasn't moved an inch in the past 20 years. So basically, I mean, there are a lot of figures that I throw around in this video. I suspect that they all work towards pointing to a situation that is unstable, dangerous, and basically unsurprising that what happened. If you're actually looking carefully, if you've been watching closely what's been happening in South Africa in the past 5 years at least, you will not be surprised at all by what happened. It is not surprising. South Africa is, I suppose, it's where it is right now, based on the figures that I've given you, and with regards to what might be possible solutions, with regards to be what might be the way forward in terms of, because already South Africa is regarded as a junk status by all investment grading institutions. Um, there's been capital flight, constantly capital flight leaving South Africa, not just from foreign investors, but also from local investors. Um, there's been a skills drain situation happening in the past 5 years. Black skilled professionals surpassed white people leaving the country around 2018, I think. End of 2018, probably beginning of 2019. So the trend lines on all the important metrics that we can use to gauge where South Africa is going, putting aside the issue of the loot, is that South Africa is well on its way to being a failed state, which has already been predicted by two risk assessment companies that are based in Sandton, that in 15 years South Africa will be a failed state. Some predict that it will be sooner than that, but all the trend lines are in that direction. So that the rioting and the looting and destruction of property is not even the biggest of our worries. The figures that I've given you, and the other figures that I haven't given you, that if you've been taking notice of what's been going on in South Africa in the past 10 years, in the past 20 years, should be raising alarms to South Africans who are concerned about the future of this beloved country. Okay. So my diagnosis with regards to the loot is that it was expected. It's not surprising. It's surprising that we have peace and quiet, looking in terms of the state, the actual state on the ground of millions of South Africans who have no hope, no future, no jobs, unemployed, unemployable. There are millions of South Africans who have not held a job for the past 20 years. And there is no hope that they're going to hold a job at all in the next 10 years. So think about those things, and we'll talk more in the future about what my thinking is around all of these things. And I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comment section about any of the figures that I mentioned, and any other points, thoughts, reflections, anything that you'd like to say about the stuff that I've talked about here. Please, on the comment section. Thank you very much. See you soon.